for me, working with this generation of women and others is like to teach people to what does it mean to like hold on to some of that for yourself, even though you have children, even though you have a family, even though you have responsibilities outside of your home. How do we just not give ourselves away completely and hold on to some of that energy that we need to take care of ourselves?
You're listening to the Feed Your Wild podcast, a conscious lifestyle show about all things nourishing for your body, mind, and soul. I'm Vanessa Rodriguez, and join me for candid conversations with changemakers, exploring health and wellness, food as medicine, intuition and spirituality, and nature-based practices that will transform your health and feed all parts of your wild self. Hello, welcome to Feed Your Wild podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Rodriguez, functional nutritionist, Akashic soul record reader, and intuitive nourishment guide. Today, I am so thrilled to be talking to someone that I've been following for a while, and I admire all that she puts out in the world and represents, and that is Empress Karen M. We are releasing this podcast and conversation on Mother's Day, and I have a totally up-leveled appreciation for mothers and relationship to a day like this. Of course, we could say every day is Mother's Day. As a new mama, and this will be my first Mother's Day, it's interesting to reflect on not just becoming a mother to another soul that is external from me, but also to reflect on the ways that I mother myself or mother other beings. Of course, you don't have to have given birth to be a mother. There are so many mothering energies and ways to bring in your mothering gifts to the world and the collective, whether that's through helping to mother yourself, others in your family, your chosen family, your community, the world, furry loved ones, lots of ways to show up, maybe even your clients and patients if you're a practitioner. So this day really, to me, represents something so much bigger than let's bring some flowers and take mom out to brunch, which is also really beautiful, and I'm probably going to do myself. But it's about sitting in with this energy of Divine Mother, reflecting on how that energy might show up and permeate in your own life experience, and how you show up for yourself as your own mother, and how Divine Mother shows up for you. Of course, I think about my own mother, Norma, who passed 12 years ago. I mentioned her in this podcast episode as well, and just really feeling her spirit and her presence today, supporting me and my sister, who also has a little one, and our overall family. And the ways that things have shifted and maybe even released or fell apart, if you will, once she left this physical realm. She really was this physical force behind the holding of a lot of traditions and celebrations and ceremony. She was the one to give me a card and a gift on sweetest day, or thoughtful gifts on any special occasion. And that kind of was lost once she passed, because she was the one to kind of steward all of that. And as I'm reflecting, I'm really feeling this call to bring that back in a way for myself and my own family, to lay down some traditions, to root into ritual and traditions and celebration, and how I can begin to become that force for my own family in a way, in my own unique way. So those are just some of my personal reflections on this Mother's Day, and I'm sending you all so many blessings and invite you to reflect, whether you're a mother or not, and whatever your relationship to mother is. I encourage you to listen to this episode, to heed and take in Karen's wise words that she has, and to begin to reflect on especially the ways that you can begin or step more deeply into your journey of self-mothering. Before we get into this episode, I have a quickie announcement, and that is that pre-sale doors are open to my practitioner program, the Wildly Intuitive Practitioner Pathway. I mentioned this in the past couple of episodes, and it will open up in June. However, I have sent out a call to anybody who is interested in learning more about this mentorship, this 6-month journey, group journey mentorship, to apply for your seat in this pre-sale special. There are limited spots, and I wanted to give a chance to folks who know that they're ready, who want to learn more, and are genuinely excited about it to sign up. And there is special pricing for the pre-sale spots. Once you apply, then I will connect with you and share more about that pricing, as well as the program, answer all of your questions. And of course, this is a no obligations, no strings attached, no pressure process when you apply. But I am really calling in those who are considering this seriously. So can't wait to hear from you. If that is you, you can access the application at wildlyrooted.com/WIP, as in WIPP. You can also click on the link in the show notes in whatever podcast app that you are listening to. And just as a quickie overview and review, if you hadn't heard about it before, the Wildly Intuitive Practitioner Pathway is for my wild-hearted practitioners and healers looking to develop a truly holistic, intuitive healing practice and to bridge the spiritual and the mystical with the scientific and practical in their client healing work. So WIP combines intuitive Akashic training, self-study and mindset reprogramming with foundational intuitive healing skills and tools so that you can discover your intuitive gifts, move past your biggest blocks around coming out of the so-called spiritual closet as a practitioner and healer, and to create the soul-aligned, divinely led impact and success that you are meant to experience here for yourself and for your clients or patients. This program is for beginner practitioners as well as seasoned healers, such as nurses, therapists, doctors, coaches, nutritionists, etc., etc. And again, if you're ready to incorporate the intuitive arts and come out of that spiritual closet and really show up in that expanded way for the collective, then I invite you to apply and to learn more. Once again, you can find that at wildlyrooted.com/WIP. That's WIPP. Pre-sale applications close May 15th, so make sure you get yours in before then. And then we will open back up in June. All right, coming back to this podcast episode, there is a lot that we cover, and I am so happy to share about Empress Karen M and her recent book that came out, The Art and Practice of Spiritual Herbalism, which I have found to be such a lovely guide to really starting to work with the power of plants as practical tools for working through symptoms of the body and disease, but also tending to the emotional and spiritual issues. Karen hits all the hot spots in this book with the major body systems and issues, and she seamlessly weaves in the spiritual correspondences associated with the plants and the body and all of the energetics. She talks about remedies and rituals that can be used to bring oneself back to healing and balance. And it's filled with stories and ancestral recipes and really accessible, practical practices that anybody can use. I'm so glad she wrote it. And she does touch on ways of working with certain plants in this episode, but you can always dive deeper and learn more if you want to learn more about how to work with some of these plants by reading her book. In this conversation, we talk about how Karen grew up in relationship with plants where there was no separation of spirit, and how she weaves that into her work today. She talks about her experience and thoughts on colic for babies and how it relates to energy exchanges. We talk about Mal de Ojo, or the evil eye, and the importance of energetic and spiritual protection for babies. Karen shares some of the biggest challenges that she sees in her community and with mothers, and how medicine in her family line was really passed through like food. And why it's critical to weave in medicine like that as part of your daily life. So she shares how incorporating the rituals of food and medicine in daily practice with children can be a form of self-care and self-mothering. She also talks about Orishas, what they are, their importance in nature and medicine, and the Orishas connected to mother, such as Yemaya. We both share about our experiences as mother, our relationship and connection to our mothers, or mother as self, and ways to tend to our mother wounds and learn to nurture and self-mother ourselves and our greater family and communities. There's so much more in this conversation that I would love for you to dive into. So without further ado, let us drop into receiving mode and open up those channels for the Divine Mother and the brilliance of Karen Rose to come through and touch your heart. I'm excited today to talk to somebody that I've been following for a minute, and I'm such a huge fan of her work and her energy and the gifts that she brings to the collective. We're talking with Master Herbalist Karen Rose. Trained in Eastern and Western herbal medicine, Karen has created an outlet for her teachings and healing modalities with the opening of Brooklyn-based Sacred Vibes Healing and Sacred Vibes Apothecary in 2002. Her inspiration for this work began as a child in her native home of Guyana, where she was exposed to how African, Caribbean, and Latin American traditions profoundly influenced plant medicine and community healing. The legacy of these lands is the foundation of Karen's spiritual and healing practice. Karen is also the author of her new book, The Art and Practice of Spiritual Herbalism: Transform, Heal, and Remember with the Power of Plants and Ancestral Medicine. So we're definitely going to get into that. Karen, thank you so much for saying yes and coming on.
I'm happy to be here. I was like, this is someplace I want to be.
Amazing, yes.
So thank you for having me.
Of course, yes, yes, yes. There is so much to talk about. I'm very excited for this conversation today. I love to start off with story, story as medicine, of course, and your roots. So you mentioned a little bit of that in your bio that I just read, but I'd love to talk about first, what is it that you do? I know I mentioned you as a master herbalist, but I'd love to hear in your own words, and how did you come into this work?
It's so interesting. I tell a story that herbalism found me. It's always been a part of my life. So when folks say, how did I come in? I'm like, well, I guess I came in by birth because I was born to people who practice plant medicine or people who use plants as medicine. The work has always been with me. I am from Guyana, which is in South America and on the equator, and my people were practicing using plant medicine as they would feeding themselves. It was daily, it was just part of their culture, part of their heritage. And Spirit saw fit to have me come into their lives there, to take this to as far as I've taken it. Mhm.
I definitely feel when I watch your IG lives or your Instagram stories, you're pretty active on Instagram, and I love when you come on and you're laying out the land for what's happening cosmically, with astrology and supporting us with herbs, are really bridging the cosmos, the spirit with the physical healing. And was that something that you also inherited? Like, what did that look like in your family? And what were the pieces that you expanded upon as you started to really root into this work?
Yeah, I think the most memorable part of me growing up was the spiritual healing component of the work. So many times I witnessed people being spiritually healed with plants, whether it was a baby who we in this country would refer to as having colic. In my country, they would say, well, what's not right with the baby's spirit? What's the spiritual thing that could be happening with the baby right now? And so they would use like garlic and different plants to heal whatever spiritual attachments was happening, right? So that baby could eat and baby could sleep well at night. Like I was a child witnessing that. So spirituality and plant medicine was always together. There was no separation. And then I got to be like, oh, you have a cold. Well, here's some thyme for your cold, right? My grandmother would give us thyme for colds and coughs and stuff like that. So I never had a separation in mind ever of how plant medicine works outside of overall maintenance of a human being on this planet, whether it was physically or spiritually, it was just maintenance and relationship, So I have to say that speaking about that now is the most natural thing to me because it's like remembering everything from my childhood.
I love that. A big part of one of the values and missions of this podcast is to help us to remember that there is no separation. And, I think that there's a lot of different ways, beautiful ways to learn how to work with plants and herbalism. But I do find that coming from more of a functional nutrition clinical background, that a lot of times the herbs are used simply because of what's seen in the studies and the constituents. And if there isn't a study for it, then you shouldn't use it. And so I could definitely see the clinical value, but there's so much depth that's missing from that piece. And so I love that this is literally where you come from and really bringing that back in to teach people. You spoke on colic, and a lot of the listeners know I have a little one just coming out of maternity leave right now, and he's 5 months. But we struggled a little bit with his digestion and what the doctors, we didn't actually take him to a doctor for it, but what they would have called colic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a journey, really figuring out what that was. And looking into the records for myself and for him, there was a lot there related to his birth story, which I haven't shared on the podcast yet, and also some ancestral things. I'm curious in terms of like just colic in general, what you typically see, if there's any patterns, because I know a lot of mothers and families struggle with this with their little ones.
Yeah, I think that's unique to each family, what the pattern is. But we do know, like, so for example, we believe in the Caribbean and many indigenous cultures know to protect their little ones from energy exchanges. I mean, we've heard of Mal de Ojo or like bad eye, right? Which would be folks who are passing energy through their eyes. And sometimes this is done quite unwanted, like not even doing it out of a place of harm. My grandmother always said, like, people would always be, what a gorgeous baby, like so much attention, like to the baby, like passing of that energy, right? So even people who were like, oh my God, what a beautiful baby, what a beautiful baby, and everyone is in exchange with this baby, and the baby has all that energy that baby is holding now, and not enough energetic shields are up, right, to process what's happening there. And so caring for them could mean, so that when that happens and there's like a lot of energy that the baby's dealing with, like sleep is not easy, feeding is not easy. And so we just don't look at it like, oh, this is a digestive issue. We start to look at it like, well, what, how else, what other energies are coming towards baby, right? And how to take care of it. And so working with like herbs like garlic, like removes any energetic exchanges from the spirit that's too much or has heaviness or has, any negative attachments to it. That's why we would use garlic, maybe. But also within those cultures, right? We used a lot for protection, which I don't see being used so much in the West. Like we always had our babies wear a bracelet or our babies wear something on the bottom of their foot. So we would tie them to our baby's clothes and just to protect baby because we knew that this was a real thing, so it's not just, this dismissal that it's just something physical for us. It never is. It's never something just physical.
Yeah, I remember. So my family's from Puerto Rico, and we always, all the little babies with the little amulets to protect against Mal de Ojo. And I remember having and finding it when my mom passed, and she kept all of these things that we wore as babies. And so I still have to get one for my own son, my little one. I don't have one yet. He's growing so big so quickly that it's almost like, oh my gosh, I have to like get a bigger size than I originally thought. But yeah, these were things that we grew up with that I didn't fully understand growing up. But, now coming into it, it's as an adult and really understanding and the energetics around it, it's fascinating to see how far we've come in terms of separation from those deep understandings. And I also feel the same as relates coming back to the body, that separation of spirit from the body, the way that, especially in the Western world, that, the medical model that we're operating in. I'm curious, when folks come to you and to your apothecary and into your apprenticeship, the communities that come to you, what are some of the things, especially related to like the women and mothers, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see today?
The biggest challenge is always not having enough time for yourself. Not you have the knowledge, but you don't have the time to practice it because we look also as practice as something outside of our normal and 9 to 5 life or 9 to 10 life. We look at it as something like we have to create this big amount of time to be in practice of the things that keep us connected to spirit. So I think through my programs or through the shop, Sacred Vibes Apothecary, is us basically teaching folks like these practices are built into your existence, right? So again, when I grew up, it was not like, well, here's medicine. Here's medicine. You should take this medicine for. Medicine was passed on to us as much as food was passed on to us. And I talk a lot about that whenever I'm speaking about my grandmother. I speak about how she would, every day we had medicine. And we would have that medicine as a part of like bitter teas before our meal, cherry syrup as our in now you need medicine. It was kind of like ongoing, like this is just what you have. And so I try to create that sameness in with my clients and also with my students of being like, what have you done today to incorporate healing in such a seamless way that it doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, I have to stop and take a medicine break, or oh, I have to stop and make this thing. It's just a part of your life. It now becomes a part of the way in which you worship yourself or your routine.
I love that. Yes, it's a total reframe for people. And it sounds also more connected to like ritual and habits than thinking about, I need XYZ medicine for this symptom. It's like the medicine is woven in your life as you're describing. For mothers in particular, because I know I'm hearing, okay, Vanessa and Karen, that sounds all well and good as a mama. Like, where do I even begin? So what is your favorite place to begin once they're open to really learning some of these rituals and ways that we can weave medicine into our lives?
I've had three children, and I feel like the easiest way to work with children and yourself is to include them in the practice. It's like the ability to build this relationship with your children is creating a legacy. And it's also creating the opportunity for, like, such connection around nature with a child. So every time, since my children were very little, I would make medicine with them. We would make lemon balm tea on full moon nights and drink that, and I would explain to them what lemon balm tea is. We would go out foraging and I would teach them how to collect, like how to identify wild plants and how to collect them. So my kids were collecting wild plants and bringing it to me and telling me, well, let's make medicine with this. I would measure out just what they need in their hands so that they can feel, touch, and learn what their body needs by as the size of their hands grew, what they needed as medicine with it, right? So this connection, they had their favorite herb as a child that they would ask for often to eat, to drink teas with. So before we went to bed at night, we would have teas and they knew which ones they wanted. My middle son, Zion, everyone would say, oh my God, this is the coolest kid. Where did how come he's always relaxed? Well, his favorite herb was catnip. So the kid was always relaxed. He was taking a nervous system herb since birth. Like he would ask for catnip tea, like several times during the day. Like he'd be like, I want my tea. And I'd be like, sure enough, right? So it was like, it's building this rich relationship. You're also being benefited. Like you're finding not only are you doing activities with your kids, but you're also finding that your nervous system is a little bit more at peace. You're a little bit more at rest, right? Their nervous system is a little bit more at peace and rest. So you're also engaging in care for yourself and them at the same time. So little ways, when we talk about little ways and ways to start, is like, get your family used to drinking some tea at night. Like, make a pot of tea and give everybody tea before they go to bed. Like, that's a great way to start mothering yourself, but also to take care of the folks that are in your household.
That's amazing. I love that he chose catnip for himself. And I know all the mamas out there are like, yeah, okay, duly noted. I'm writing down catnip for my babies.
It's so good.
So good. So I know that you also speak into, especially in your book, weaving in the Orishas. And I am curious, well, first, for those who aren't familiar with what Orishas are, if you can speak into that and sort of your background with that, but also how you weave that into your work and your personal life, like you just did, you talked about with your family.
So Orishas are dynamic energy forces, and God is the gods and the goddesses, the pantheon of the African Yoruba religious system. Many people are familiar with Ifa, are familiar with the practice of Ifa, or maybe initiates into Ifa themselves, and they're familiar with these gods in the pantheon, right? So for me, these energies are universal, and these energies have many parallels or many connections to our planetary energies. And these planetary energies, and along with these, the energetic imprints of the Orishas, are also in our plants and seen in many ways in nature, but specifically for me in plant medicine. So when I speak of the energetic imprintation of plants, I'm also speaking of the energetics of Jupiter or the energetics of Obatala is also very much integrated into the plants that we work with. So when I teach spiritual herbalism, I not only teach about how we are physically using plants for our wellness, but I'm talking about how we're spiritually using plants for our wellness also, right? To draw us closer in energetic alignment with nature and nature in general.
Hmm. It's so powerful to read some of about these energies and aspects connected to the plants and our bodies. I'm curious, related more to, since we're on the topic of mother, What are some Orishas that are really connected to mother and sort of that expression of life?
Yeah, I speak the Orisha Yemaya, who is deeply connected to it's our primordial mother. Yemaya is usually represented with the ocean, and we all knew there was water here way before land, right? So it is from the ocean that we were all life on this earth was created in many ways, right? So we speak of Yemaya as this mother energy, this nurture, this maternal energy that we go back to learn how to mother, to learn what softness means, but also to learn what respect and what reverence means. Because I tell a story of me and my son Zion walking by the ocean one day, and he had found this amazing shell. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I want to keep this shell." And as we were walking, he bent down to wash the sand off of it, and the ocean washed the shell away from him. And he was like, "Okay, mom, I think that, just as the ocean gives us, if the ocean can take." And he's like, "You really have to," and he's little, he's like,
Wow.
"You really have to like be careful." And I was like, "Yeah, you really do. And I think that's a lesson that Yemaya teaches us in mothering that yes, there's so much abundance, and yes, it's so giving, and yes, it's so nurturing, but the fierceness is also really present, right? We have to respect the ocean when we're in it. For any of us who are like in the ocean, it's like we feel our smallness, we feel how at any moment we can be taken away. And at the same time, we feel enormously held, right? We float on this water. We feel so enormously held, washed clean, cared for. And yeah, it's just, when I think about that, I think about like as mothers, like holding that baby in our womb, or people who carry babies that hold them in their womb. It's like really tremendous, right? To think that you have that capacity to give life and to protect it and to hold it, and all of those things that we see is so connected to this element of nature and this goddess Yemaya.
So powerful. I'm curious what might be some ways if there are folks that are listening that are really called to maybe learn more and to work with Yamaya. Like, are there ways that you would recommend starting off and building a relationship?
Absolutely. Any of these energies, it's all about relationship building, right? And so we also want to show reverence and respect for folks who this is their daily practice. This is their way of connecting with spirit, their initiates to Yemaya. So as you are first learning, the simple ways to do that is to go to the ocean and just sit with the ocean and feel the power of the ocean and give reverence to the ocean. And what that means is to start to really think about our relationship with water and to start to, really, for me, I'm like, how can you say that you have this deep reverence for Yemaya and the ocean when you're part of pollution? Right? Like, how do we revere water and water sources in general? The way in which we engage with these energies daily speak a lot to like our connection to it, right? So maybe it's like being engaged with cleaning the ocean, being engaged with teaching about that, being engaged with talking about the power of the ocean, just sitting at the ocean, feeling its power, feeling its nurturing. Whenever I'm in water, I'm like praying for water. I'm praying that this element, this most important element that we need, always is here for my grandchildren and their grandchildren and beyond. So it's like connecting and creating a relationship first is super important, and that it's quite simple. It's just like praising and praying and maintenance, right? If we have the fortunate experience of being near the ocean.
I really miss the ocean. There's like that we have beautiful rivers here, and where I live, I'm in Southern Oregon, and I was born in Chicago, so we had the Great Lakes there as well, which are very expansive and almost ocean energy, but there's
Yes.
nothing like it. There's nothing like going back to Puerto Rico and connecting. Ugh, and when you're saying feeling the smallness of yourself within that, I realize over the years, my fear has really shifted, but it's still there. This like deep fear when I'm with the ocean, and yet like this deep love that is so big. And so it's interesting, this paradoxical connection and relationship to it. It's like, yeah, and you talk about reverence and respect. It's like major respect to Mama Ocean.
And you talk about that paradoxical fear, and it feels very much like our relationships with our mothers, also, right? That
Aha.
deep fear, like at least Caribbean mothers that are African, that deep fear, and then that largeness of that relationship that really influences all our relationships in our life, right? That initial relationship that reverberates through all of our relationships within our life, that relationship with mother, right? And so much of the work that we will do in this lifetime is truly to work out that relationship with mother. So, yeah, I could, as paralleled to that, when being held in the ocean and developing a way of like holding our own in there.
So profound, this connection to the waters and to this relationship to mother, and also self mothering eventually, and learning those ways. I would love for you to speak into that a little bit.
We're coming up to Mother's Day, and one of the things that my team and I are like have been talking about is basically like Mother's Day brings up so many complicated emotions also, because it's around all the ways in which you haven't been mothered, or all the ways in which we may not have a mother, or we may have lost our mother at a young age, or we may not be in current relationship with our mothers, and yet this day comes up, so it brings up a lot of wounding, and it certainly brings up a lot of trauma associated to those relationships. As I said, this old relationship that needs to keep working, right? Whether it's we're working with the current mother that we have, or the mothers before that has come before. These all come through us in our bodies. These relationships are all held in our bodies, certainly in our womb, this lineage of mothering. And so when we're working with what it means to like, how do we work with nurturing ourselves? We're also looking at the ways that we've been taught how to nurture ourselves, right? Because nurturing isn't something that you necessarily come into this world. We, as babies, we need to be nurtured, right? And someone else outside of us has to nurture us. And then hopefully that person is skilled enough to begin to teach us how to nurture ourselves. What often happens is that we don't necessarily have a dad. We don't have someone. We've had really busy mothers who've had to work, right? And sometimes they themselves have not been taught how to nurture. And so they couldn't have possibly teach us something that they didn't know. And so we're having now, this generation is having to learn what it means to self nurture. And that requires us, number one, to have deep compassion for our mothers and to have deep forgiveness for our mothers, understanding that this is not something that they even do for themselves. So how could they possibly teach it? And to really look at like, what does it mean to start to care for ourselves in a way that could reverberate through lineage, meaning that the way we begin to start to care for ourselves, we can also open that up to something for our mothers so that our mothers can learn from us how to nurture themselves, right? And then our children can then learn from us how to nurture themselves. We're healing 7 generations backward and forward anytime we do healing for ourselves. We're really in a powerful place when it comes to like what self-nurturing means, right? And for me, self-nurturing individually, that could mean many different things, but taking moments to really reflect on what you're needing in the moment is a huge part of nurturing self, right? And some of us need naps, some of us don't. Some of us need teas, some of us need walk by the ocean, some of us need time with our loves, however that shows up. Like building that into your routine in order to honor yourself is really what we're speaking of when we talk about nurturing.
When you're talking, I think about my own mother, of course. I felt like my mother did the best she could and she was an amazing mom. I never thought about other types of maybe challenging relationships of mother. all the feelings that might come up with that with Mother's Day until I lost my mom on the physical realm. She passed from breast cancer. Oh my gosh, it was like 12 years now. It's so crazy how quickly time passes here. But yeah, she really was the catalyst for what I do today. And she taught me so much that I didn't even realize until it came through after her passing. And so a lot coming up once she left this physical realm, and my exploration of our relationship and motherhood and nourishment, and reflecting on how, I think this is very common for immigrant parents and first generation, that there's the hustle and grind,
Absolutely.
and right, and there's not maybe so many resources available. And so that was our life. My dad had two jobs. My mom was working. They had three kids. And
Likewise.
yeah, and so they did. And my dad is still doing the best they can. And for my mom, I saw how it really took a toll.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that was a huge, I mean, of course, there's so much more, like in terms of ancestral and generational and her relationships with her family that contributed to what eventually would lead to breast cancer. But definitely this, I guess you would say, inability to self nourish, whether that was due to circumstance or just like unawareness, and how that led to dis-ease. I'm sure you see that a lot in your communities as well.
Well, yeah, it's the thing that surrounds, especially BIPOC women, right? Or BIPOC people. Will, as you've spoken of, we come from like an immigrant lineage or we come from an enslaved generation. We don't know what nurturing is. We're still trying to figure it out. And especially when it comes to like nurturing the self. What we do know is that we've had such examples from our lineage that it was a luxury to folks to nourish and nurture themselves. Certainly for anyone who was nurturing others, we come from a lot of service oriented, a generation that was service oriented, right? So a lot of us who had immigrant parents came to this country and they cared for other people. And certainly the folks that were living in this country from enslaved descendants also cared for other people. A lot of them were housekeepers and child care workers and home health aides. And a lot of this is our mother's story, also, right? And so when that care is so extended outside of the self, the organs in our body that it's about nurturing, they will have dis-ease. And so the breasts are deeply connected to nurturing, right? And so there's an imbalance there because we're giving so much of ourselves out into care of others that sometimes we don't even know how to replenish that care for ourselves, you know? And so this generation, for me, working with this generation of women and others is like to teach people to what does it mean to like hold on to some of that for yourself, even though you have children, even though you have a family, even though you have responsibilities outside of your home. How do we just not give ourselves away completely and hold on to some of that energy that we need to take care of ourselves?
Yes. What are some of your favorite plant allies to begin with to help with self nourishment and also mothering, whether you're an identified mother or not?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite plants is motherwort. And I talk about this often. I think motherwort rebuilds the relationship or the connection to what it means to nourish you. It's a herb that's really great for the womb and hormonal balancing. It is also an herb that is great for the heart, that like helps to create the courage in the heart that's so connected to the womb, right? So motherwort is good for like hot flashes and balancing your menstrual cycle and anxiety. It is contraindicated if you're on any hormonal therapy. So look into it to make sure that it's good for you. But it's one of those that really builds the connection to the mother, right? And I love red raspberry because red raspberry is this beautiful herb that teaches you how not to give away too much of yourself. It really brings the body into balance, the body and the spirit into balance when it comes to like over giving or over nurturing. It helps you to learn how to hold your creative force and hold on to some of your vital energy force. So those are the two herbs that are coming to mind right now.
really have an outstanding appreciation for those, especially now. Well, walked with red raspberry and having red raspberry as an ally for me during pregnancy, especially, but also beginning to work with motherwort. And, it's interesting because I have this karmic, I think I came here to really work on the mother wound. Not that I had a super challenging relationship with my mother, but I think there's some deep ancestral things. And also being a Cancer sun and just like womb stuff, mother stuff, a lot coming up. And I've had a lot of resistance to that a ton of resistance. And like, oh, no, I don't have to look in that area. I'm looking everywhere else, right? I'm working on digestion, I'm working on like throat and voice. And now it's like, obviously, this pregnancy and birthing my baby and becoming a mother has brought me viscerally to this place.
Right.
And I have no choice. But to really start to work with these allies and to work with these energies and all that's stored and held in that area. I know for so many women that we carry so much in those spaces. And in particular, you mentioned, BIPOC and Black women in particular, Black bodies carrying so much in terms of generational trauma. And so for those listening who are in this population, what are some things that you can speak into? I know this is like another podcast episode in itself, right? But I just feel like we're talking about Mother's Days coming up, and I can't ignore the fact that like Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related causes than white women. Like I was looking so much into this stuff while in pregnancy, and just it's so enraging, and yet it is the reality right now. So what are some places that we can begin to work with? Like when you're working with somebody, where's the first place that you like to start?
That is a whole other segment. But one of the things that I want to say is, these high cases of maternal, the rates that we have, especially for Black women, about losing Black women in pregnancy. I mean, of course, that's part of the system, right? So we live in a system that doesn't consider Black women bodies valuable, right? So we don't receive the best care through pregnancy within the current medical industrial complex that exists, right? So we have to start to look outside of that and say to ourselves, what are the better places that respects our bodies and respects our legacy to receive care? So whether it's like, and we've shown like significantly how having the right care team prevents like maternal loss, right? And so whether it's like putting our money, and when I speak of this, I talk about it often. I'm like, we know when systems are not working for us. And so we have to create systems outside of those systems, right? So what does it look for us to have? What is it going to take for us to have care teams that have home birth midwives and doulas that we can really work with our bodies while we're carrying life, right? That's a shift that has to be made. The other part of it is like realizing that not only do we carry trauma and we carry wounding from our ancestral lineage, we also carry a ton of gifts, and we carry a lot of resilience, and we carry a lot of healing as Black women, because as a generation, we should not have even been here. But because of the dire circumstances that we've had to come through and the resilience in our grandmothers and their grandmothers' bodies is what got us here. So what does it mean for us to tap in to the resilience of those folks, right? What does it mean to tap in not only to the trauma that has come through our lineage, but also the gifts that have come through our lineage? What does it mean to recognize how powerful you are? What does it mean to recognize that you are built with the survival gifts that you need and how to tap into that, right? And so when I work with them, and I think I also speak on those because I think it is a lie, and it is a lie to think that we were only born with trauma. And so we often hear that, like, Black women hold trauma, Black women hold trauma. But I'm also like, yeah, but we also hold these incredible gifts of resistance, resilience, liberation, freedom, like that's tied up into us, that's got us to where we are. And so those are the things that we need to tap into for healing.
Thank you for speaking into that. And I'm curious, when you're working with your ancestors with that, is there any approach or way, that modality that you like to connect in with that lineage and that resilience?
Of course, I think, and plants are super resilient too, right? So if you're not necessarily feeling that resilience, it's about working with a plant like dandelion to really understand what strength can mean. What does it mean to be a weed and survive, right? Like even in hardened places, what does it mean to have that ability to survive and push through and continue to speak our truth and take up space, and all of that we can learn from plant medicine also. But when I'm personally working with my ancestors, I go to the resilient ones. I go to the ones of who I heard the stories of as like the warriors in the lineage. And I really connect into them and ask them in times of when I'm faced with circumstances that I need to push through or be resilient through. I'm calling on those people to be like, please, where's the support? Like, I need your support. So I believe that our ancestry is as far away from us as just a word. Right there, they're always sitting with us. And the moment that we call them in is that the moment they show up, they always want to work for us, but they do give us a lot of autonomy over our lives and they don't interfere in our lives. They patiently wait to be called in. And the moment that I call them in is the moment they go to work for me. That's one of the ways, is like working with the folks who I'm like, yeah, I need your energy right now.
And thanks for that reminder, because I had a similar experience when I started working with my ancestors, because that wasn't something that I grew up, like my family didn't teach me about that, although there was a lot of prayer and other things, but was that they were there waiting. It's like you have to ask for help. And asking for help is such a foreign concept for so many people in the actual practice of it, because we can say, oh, yeah, like I need help. But then to actually take those steps, identify those that might be supportive, and then to use your voice is really challenging for a lot of people, especially women.
Yeah, I think it's challenging to ask for help. And this could really be a way that we start to ask other people for help, is asking our ancestors for help. Like start there, like start to work with the spirits that are around you by saying, like building that relationship, learning your voice in that world. And it could happen in many different ways. You can write a letter if you're finding it difficult to speak, and choose an ancestor that you may have had already a relationship with. So if you loved your grandma and your grandma passed, or if you loved your grandfather, an aunt, someone in your lineage that you may have been close to that's now gone, then continue to speak to them. Continue to speak to them as you would if they were here. And building that relationship, one, tends to create the energy to open up the relationship with others.
It's reminding me to go back to that work because I feel like I started and then a lot began to shift. And then I sort of lost, of course, we don't lose the connection, but in my mind, it was no longer top of mind to connect. And so this conversation is really bringing me back to that, and the importance of just maintaining, like, just as you would with family, right? Like maintaining that regular relationship.
Even more so, right? Because my daughter Lauren, she says, I tell them, and Lauren was telling the story the other day, and she said, my mom always says that when she's not here in flesh, she's in spirit, and she'll be able to do so much more for us. And of course, that is true. Like, I am in spirit, I have no bounds, right? I can be anywhere, I can do anything for them. And so it's the understanding that we have these group of ancestors who can be anywhere and show up at any time and is always present, and to be able to call on them and ask them, it really eases our journey. One thing I want to say with like my children I have specific ancestor for each child that I call on, right? That has come in with the energy of my child, and being in talking to my ancestors, I know who's who for each child. And throughout schooling, I would always say, this is your, like, it's not just me who's brought forward this child. This child is a continuation of your lineage. This is a responsibility. And I'm talking to my ancestors when I'm saying this. I'm like, this child is your responsibility too. I need you to go and do this thing for my children, like clear this path, make this happen. It's not just me. And so when we talk about it takes a village, it's definitely not only your living village, it takes a village in spirit also to do this work.
Oh, so important to remember that. Thank you for bringing that personal piece. It makes me tune into a little bit more for my own son, the energies that are connected to him. There's a lot. There are a
Mhm.
lot. And so I'm going to make that a practice of really speaking to our ancestors and family, that larger extension of family to caretake. And yeah, because it's like we're only separated by this veil, right? And
Absolutely. And we know now as spiritual people, like this veil doesn't even exist anymore. Like it
right.
is so thin, it is non-existent pretty much. Yeah.
Feeling that. I'm feeling that. Like, especially with you could say the closer ones, like my mom, for example, I feel her so much. And one of the ways that she comes through for me is through numbers. And so she passed on January 10 of 2010. So the number is 110. And that pops up everywhere and in her fashion. So it's like, when I'm throwing a little fit, like a hissy fit or something, and I need to be checked, like I'll see the number.
She's like, cut it out. I
Yeah,
know.
total. She's like, snap out of it, like center yourself. And so she was Capricorn, very, very earthy, rooty mama, like takes no shit and knows how to serve and serve kind of challenging advice and information, but in a way that is like for your highest good. And so I always respected that gift of hers and try to work with her so that I can also embody that.
That is great. That is great.
Well, I want to have also an opportunity for you to speak into your offerings. And I know that there's a lot of people listening. They're like, okay, well, how do I start working with Karen? And first of all, buy her book because it's amazing. And it's such an amazing guide. You have this ability to take these expansive concepts and information and distill it to like these straightforward and not simplistic, but simple ways of receiving and understanding, which is so hard to do. So I just wanted to speak into that and really recommend that folks dive into your book. But what are some other ways that you are working with people and how they can learn more?
So I teach an herbal spiritual apprenticeship program. It's the spiritual herbalism apprenticeship program, and it's about 2.5 years. Our level one, we're accepting level one apprentices for fall at this time for our fall program. And it's an opportunity to really sit with me and work through your plant knowledge from identification to medicine making to understanding body systems, to understanding the spirit that's held in your body and how to work with external spiritual energy also. Yeah, and it's a beautiful program so far. This program, I started it about 12 years ago now, and we've educated about 700 people within this program. And it's a hands on, it's meeting with me one on one, right? Like to get this stuff done. It's all virtual at this time. And aside from that, joining our mailing list is a great way to get information. And you can find that on our website, which is sacredvibeshealing.com. You can find how to get on our mailing list there. And we have stores in Brooklyn, of course. We have Sacred Vibes Apothecary and Sacred Botanica, which are all ways in which you can connect to us to get like healing medicines and spiritual medicines for your life and for your family.
Beautiful. And as I'm listening to you and I'm hearing birds chirping just outside. So for those listening, I drove into town to do this interview and I'm in a space and the guy mentioned, oh, I'm so sorry, but this just happened yesterday where these birds nested and they had these baby birds and they're right outside the window. So I hope that doesn't disturb your interview.
Yeah. What a beautiful soundtrack to our interview.
I know. And talk about, mothering and these babies. So they're chirping away. But your program apprenticeship sounds amazing. And I'm really excited that it's online. For those who are kind of thinking about, well, how does that work in relation to learning to work with herbs? Do you have like a way or format that you could just sort of explain really quickly how that works virtually?
Well, we meet every week and it's more than just the plants, right? We're studying the body system, how they work with plants. And then we teach folks like what to grow, how to grow, when to harvest, how to cultivate it, and how to make medicine. So it does incorporate the plants. And we work with people to get their hands into soil and make sure they're connecting to the plants because it's necessary.
Perfect. Yep. I just wanted to let people know a little bit more about that. And of course, we can't let you go without answering our final question that we ask everybody. And that is, what, Karen, is currently feeding your wild? So whether that's body, mind, soul, take it as you will.
Yeah, I'm such a creator. I think that's what's feeding my wild right now is noticing what's coming in, like the plants that are coming in. I love springtime because it's so exciting to see, especially on the East Coast where our winter is like there's nothing out there. It's so exciting to see like these plants like push through the ground. And so I'm like really enjoying my park walks. I'm really enjoying like being out in nature. I'm enjoying like noticing the medicine and their stages of like when they first come in to like as they're growing through their whole growing season, figuring out like, yeah, what I want to make with this one, what do I want to make with that one, like everything, my eyes, I'm like, I'm so alive right now. So I feel like that's definitely connecting to my wildness, my innate connection to nature.
Ooh, I feel that energy. Totally. I'm curious, are you working with any plants currently or your faves?
I can't help but to notice the beautiful dandelion that's coming in. It's just everywhere. It is so wild. It is just like, I'm a weed and I'm going to take over this whole place. So, everywhere I go up here, when I'm walking in the park, I'm walking down the streets, I see these bright yellow rayed flowers. And I'm like, wow, here's dandelion, like in the most unexpected places. It's just everywhere. Speak of wild. It's like, I'm going to grow wherever I want.
I love it. Yeah, the audacity. I love
Mhm,
it.
mhm, mhm.
Brilliant. Well, you mentioned your website. Is there any other way that you would like to share for how folks get connected with your work?
Yeah, I teach a lot of like medicine making on my IG page, which is Karen M Rose on Instagram, Empress Karen M Rose. If you're trying to like learn a little bit more about like what to gather, how to make it into medicine, I actually do that. I actually teach a lot of that on there. So it's a good place to keep up with me.
I know that I mentioned, but I'm a fan of your IG page too. You share such good stuff, so definitely recommend you guys check it out. And Karen, we're at the end. I wanted to just open up this space to allow if there's anything else that wants to come through, any parting last words for our listeners today.
Yeah, I think the episode on mothering is so amazing because we're mothering all the time. Like we're mothering communities, we're mothering children, we're mothering each other, and how important it is to mother ourselves is incredible. So yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you, Vanessa, for having me. And I look forward to following your work also.
Thank you, Karen. I am feeling very blessed to have this conversation with you and to share it with our listeners in the world. So, hope everybody enjoyed, and I'm excited for you to dive more into Karen's world and work. And many blessings to all the mothers and everyone beyond.
Thank you.
Hey there, I made something for you. One of the biggest challenges that I hear from people is that they are feeling stuck when it comes to their health. You're a smart, capable, and creative change maker, right? And you know what you should be doing for your health. So what gives? Well, it's not about willpower. And I wanted to create something that would help you to unlearn the things that are keeping you stuck so that you can get out of your own way and master the mindset of health. That's why I created Wildly Unstuck, where you'll learn the top 5 things that I have found to sabotage your health goals and what to do about them. You'll learn what it really takes to become committed and unstoppable when it comes to your health goals and find the clarity you've been looking for so you know exactly what to do to get back into alignment. And I made it totally free. So if this is something that you want to dive into and create a vision and soul goals for your health and your life and bring your gifts to the world, because we know that we need it, then I invite you to join us in Wildly Unstuck. You can find that at wildlyrooted.com/unstuck. I'll see you on the other side.